and welcome to another episode of That Made Your List, a weekly podcast where an average, ordinary film fan, that's me, interviews other average, ordinary film fans. My name is Dave Gudger, and joining me on the pod this week, we've got Robert Parker. Hello, Robert.
Hey there.
Thanks for coming on. Before we get going with the same 20 questions that everybody else normally gets, why don't you tell myself and the listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a long-time listener of this podcast. I really appreciate you having me on. I am from the state of Wisconsin, the cold north of the U.S. I live in a very, very small town kind of near Milwaukee. I'm going into my third year of college studying math, economics, and business, but films are really where I find a lot of my enjoyment. I like watching movies. I like competing in all these trivia things that are going on in this community all the time. I'm a stage actor. I've been in over 30 productions over the last 13 years. Did my first show when I was 7 years old, so I really like performing. And yeah, that's the gist of it.
Okay, that's super. That's really good. Okay, right, we'll jump into these then. We'll start at the top. I mean, the past couple of weeks I've been thinking about, we'll swap the order out. Paul Oyama came up with the idea of maybe putting the favourite film last to sort of build towards a favourite film. But the past couple of times it's pretty much been the same kind of answer each time. But we'll stick with this. Up at the top there, what's your favourite film?
Yeah, so this definitely will not come as a surprise to anybody when I say that I'm going to cheat right off the bat and pick three movies. My favorite film trilogy is, of course, the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yep.
Very on brand for myself. That comes as no surprise to most people listening who know me. If I have to pick one, I'm going to be picking Fellowship of the Ring, which is the first film.
Yep.
But overall, I think the 12 and a half hours of extended cuts of these three movies are just filmmaking perfection in every way, from the cast to the cinematography to the story being told, the script, the visual effects, the practical effects, just everything combined, the location shooting. They take so much care in adapting some of the richest literature ever written in fantasy specifically.
Absolutely.
And definitely just comes out of the gate, and these are three amazing movies.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, I'm a massive Middle-earth fan. I don't really like saying that too much because a lot of people, when they seem to be playing them on these trivia things, seem to be surprised when they get the Middle-earth questions right. And I'm like, I'm happy to fly under the radar with that. But yeah, I've got the extended cuts. As far as that's the only way to watch them, surely.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, there's so much that did get cut out for the theatrical ones that enriches the viewing when you are watching it.
Exactly, yeah. There's so many more character moments. There's so many more funny and quotable lines. There's more backstory on a lot of different characters. Just more world building, which is already something that the theatrical cuts do really well.
Yes.
But it's something that the extended cuts just take to a whole nother level, and it's just the best fantasy world building in any movie ever, in my regard.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. As you say, the effects on it, the way that the forced perspective of getting the hobbits hobbit-sized when you're coming up against obviously Ian McKellen and Gandalf, it's that there for what is 18 Fellowship's 18 years, no 17 years old now, until 2001 came out.
Yep, 2001.
The amount that graphics and special effects have gone in those 18 years, they still hold up. I mean, there's a couple of times that is a little bit shoddy, but by and large, 99% of the time, it still massively holds up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the both the visual and practical effects, because it's not like they used just one way to make the Hobbits all. They use forced perspective. They use size doubles. They use scale doubles. They use visual effects. They built the sets, the identical sets in different sizes to film Ian McKellen in one scene, and then to film Elijah Wood in a different scene, and then they just overlapped them on top of each other. So there was so much care really taken into making sure that the world felt almost realistic, but still with just that slight edge to make it feel still like a fantasy story instead of like a historical timepiece. That's the amount of care that went in. You can really see it even all these years later.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, something else you brought up there, the locations. New Zealand is almost a part of the cast itself. It's such a perfect the rolling green hills of Gondor and of the Rohirrim and all that. Like it really does. It plays into it so well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Especially when you look at, some of the shots, or a lot of the shots specifically of just landscapes, are just them in helicopters shooting on landscapes.
Yes.
And then some of the shots are digitally edited. Almost every shot in the entire film is digitally graded, which, I mean, almost every movie does nowadays, now that CGI is so popular. But in the early 2000s, when they were making these movies, it was not a extremely popular filmmaking technique, but they took the physical film, scanned it into a computer, were able to change the colors, like I said, just slightly off to make something feel just a little bit more magical, a little bit more imaginary about it, and then imprinted it back onto film. So that the process of digitally grading and the process of making these landscape, just the beautiful shots and the setting of the films, it really just what transports you when you're watching them.
No, absolutely. So obviously we're talking pretty generally now with the trilogy as a whole, but with the Fellowship, what is it about the Fellowship that sets it off for you as being your favourite with it?
Yeah, so most days when somebody asks me which of my three is the favorite, I'll say Fellowship. Some days it's Return of the King, and other days still it's Two Towers, but Fellowship, for the most part, when I am forced to choose, I choose Fellowship because I think it has the most distinctive beginning, middle, and end of any of the three. I think Two Towers and Return of the King are great arching stories for the trilogy, but as individual movies, I think Fellowship stands out as having its own arc, and part of that is because it's the first movie. You can't really have its own separate arc in a second or a third installment. But yeah, definitely. I mean, the first movie was nominated for 13 Oscars. I believe it won 4.
Yes. 4
Yeah, so I think also with Fellowship, I think you get some of the best character moments, because you get a character like Boromir, who is, unless you watch the extended cuts, isn't really in the other two as much. You get actual moments with the Fellowship together as a whole. By the end of Fellowship of the Ring, the 9 members of the Fellowship have broken up and are on their own paths, and we see their stories and their subplots continue in Two Towers and Return of the King, but we really see them as a unit functioning together in Fellowship. And we see the interactions between Aragorn and Boromir, and we see all of the hobbits interact together before they all get broken up. So I think that those character moments and that world building and that setting of the Fellowship on the road, really in the second half of the film, is really what sets it apart for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's. I mean, I'm a big one with when it's very distinct trilogy arcs. I always think that the first of the trilogy is massively important, and more often than not, it's my favourite of a trilogy, because it sets the tone of the good trilogies. So we say there's always the sorts where it's 3 where the second one they improve upon. I'm thinking Star Wars, the original trilogy, and so on and so forth. But with each part of this trilogy has its own high points. As you say, you've got the world building, the introduction to the Fellowship themselves, and the character development in this one. The second one that has got some of the best battle scenes.
Absolutely,
in
even
Two
more.
Towers.
Absolutely. The Battle of Helm's Deep arguably is one of the greatest battle sequences ever put to film, and that includes even the battles in Return of the King. The action in Two Towers is incredible, and we do get some more of the character relationships, like the Legolas and Gimli relationship.
Yes.
We get more of that in Two Towers. We also meet more of the human characters in Two Towers. We meet a lot of the, specifically like Faramir, and we meet King Theoden and Éowyn and Éomer. We explore more themes, while the first one is really setting up this story and this grand arc, and it's very good versus evil, and it's very, these pure hobbits taking on such a terrifying quest. The second one explores more themes. It gets a little bit political with the conflict between Rohan and Gondor.
Yes.
It really does start exploring more themes, which is one of the things I like most about Two Towers. Not to mention, Two Towers has the introduction of Gollum. who is arguably the best written character in film in general, in my opinion. But amazing motion capture, revolutionary motion capture technology and performance by Andy Serkis.
Absolutely. Okay, right. Knowing, and say spoiler alert for everybody else, knowing that we're going to talk about the other two as well, come your final question, we'll draw a line for now under the Lord of the Rings, and we'll move on. Because I can say, I another one that I really do enjoy this, and I could talk for hours just on those three.
Absolutely.
Those three films. So we'll move on. What's the last film that you watched?
The last film that I watched is a really, really great movie musical called Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the 1971 Gene Wilder, Mel Stewart movie, which is a fantastic movie. Just really Gene Wilder's performance, the music, the songs. I'm a big fan of the book Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl.
Yep.
I last summer I was actually in a production of the stage musical of this movie where I played Charlie. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. But this movie is one I rewatched a lot as a kid, and coming back to it for the first time in a while was just really nice to see how it's aged, which overall has aged really well, mostly due to the performance of Gene Wilder.
Yes.
A lot to do with the subversion of themes. You know, there are parts when you look at this movie and it's almost like a horror film, like when they're going through the tunnel and you think about what's really happening, like Wonka is murdering children and you know, potentially like slave labor, and he's paying them in cocoa beans and like all these crazy things, but it's all subverted in a kids movie about this poor kid who just wants to be happy, who wants to have hope, and we see it mostly through Charlie's eyes.
Yes, yeah, it's incredible how well it holds up and how beloved it is by all generations. I mean, as you say, I'm significantly older than you. I love this film. My parents love this film. Again, going the other way around, my youngest absolutely adores this film. And it's the fantastic world that Roald Dahl builds within the book that is shown into the film. That just sets it off an absolute treat with it. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's just a really timeless story, especially when you look at especially this movie is very timeless compared to the one that I'm just gonna. I'm going to bring it up just for the one point to say that the 2006 Tim Burton version is actually a closer adaptation of the book than the 71 version, but the 71 version is superior in every single way, except that it's not quite as close to the book.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. Some of the funny parts in this, it's... oh, God, who was it that played Violet? I can never remember the
in this movie, I don't know.
In this one, no. She didn't want to do the nose picking part in it. In the actual film at the start, she had a crush on Peter Ostrom, who played Charlie.
Yep.
And didn't want to do what she deemed to be gross and look bad in his eyes. So, but I think Veruca Salt is the only one still actually working of the kids. She's the only one that's still working in the sort of acting. As an acting career, none of the others made it into it, which always, from those in such a big film as well, it's quite surprising with it.
Yeah, definitely. But they all are really great child actors in this movie. I mean, the kids who get the golden tickets, except for Charlie, as far as the other four, they're not really meant to be like normal kids. They're supposed to be larger than life caricatures, and I think that is portrayed really, really well.
Absolutely. And as you say, there's parts in this when it really is quite creepy.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, as it progresses round, and obviously the more and more inventive ways that he is essentially bumping the kids off with.
Exactly, yeah.
It's there. Another one of that, the Candyman, the candy store owner, Sammy Davis Jr. originally wanted to play him.
Oh, I did not know that.
Obviously, the song "The Candyman" ended up being one of Sammy Davis's most popular songs in his career. But yeah, he wanted to play the Candyman on it, but obviously they went with I can't remember his name either now. It's but they went along with the other actor instead.
Yeah.
This
Well,
go on.
one really interesting aspect that's a little bit different from the movie version to just my experience with the on-stage show is actually the actor who plays Willy Wonka in the stage show is also supposed to play the Candyman, implying that the entire contest is rigged the entire time to make sure that Charlie gets the last ticket, to make sure that Charlie wins. Which is something that's not explored a ton in the movie, but it's still just an interesting thing I thought I'd bring up.
No, absolutely. It's but yeah, it's. I mean, the books themselves. I mean, are you a fan of the books as well? Did you say?
I've read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is one that I read as a kid, and then again last summer before auditioning for the show.
Yeah, because I remember reading those when I was primary school. So grade school over there as it is. And also then the sequel that he wrote in the Great Glass Elevator. I can't remember a great deal about that, if I remember rightly. But
yeah, I haven't read it either. I haven't read that
it's
one.
a long while since I've read that one. The opening credits, the chocolate factory that you see is actually the Tobler factory in Switzerland. It's an actual working chocolate factory, or it was.
Oh, that's awesome.
The film, the factory that makes Toblerone, the triangular shaped chocolate bar. That was the factory that was all created, and that was where it was the outside scenes of the opening credits was.
That's very cool.
That's cool. Nominated for 3 or 4 Oscars again. It didn't win any. It was best music, original song score. It was nominated for, and one other I think, but it didn't win any. Okay, that's great. Just moving on then. Let's get into the genre type questions as it was. What's your favourite action adventure film?
Yeah, so this one was a little bit tougher. I am not a huge action adventure fan. I mean, obviously I've seen the ones that I'm supposed to see, but other than that, it's not a genre I'm incredibly familiar with. So on a lot of these, actually, not just the genres, but a lot of these questions, there were a lot that I had just down as nominations that I didn't end up going with, movies that either have been talked about before, like Last Crusade. I believe you and Cody talked about that. Cody Newberry, a good friend of mine from the community. But there's other ones like The Bourne Supremacy, Speed, Casino Royale. Like, these are all action-adventure movies that I really enjoy. But the one I ended up going with was actually a very recent movie, Edgar Wright's Baby Driver. Edgar Wright is one of my favorite directors, and I still kind of wish we would have seen what his Ant-Man would look like, but had he stayed on to that project, we would not have gotten Baby Driver.
No, very true.
So I'm still very glad Baby Driver was in my top 3 or 4 favorite movies of last year, one of my favorite films of last summer. A great cast, Ansel Elgort, John Hamm, Isaac Gonzalez, Lily James. Christopher Plummer makes a great appearance in that movie. But yeah, the way that this movie is edited together is just brilliant in every way. From the opening scene, or the opening car chase scene, of course, to the song Bell Bottoms.
Yes.
And then you have the opening credits where Baby is getting coffee and it's all one take. And all of the lyrics to the song are on the spray painted everywhere.
Yes.
Like that is just amazing. That Edgar Wright's style is just bleeding off the screen in this movie, and I love every second of it.
No, absolutely. As you say, it was such a surprisingly good film. I think it's, for me anyway, I hadn't heard a great deal about it until it was out and everyone was raving about it. I missed it in the theatres, and it popped up on. I can't remember where it popped up now that I saw it, but anyway, I ended up seeing it and was absolutely blown away by it. As you say, the opening credits part just hooks you, and you don't know what to expect from the rest of it, because it's kind of set on its own. It doesn't tie into the heist aspect of the rest of the film, but it's so inventive the way that the credits are just tied into everything else that he's going through, and then that opening car chase just hooks you for the rest of it.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, I was looking up to see this movie twice in theaters last summer. If I remember right, it barely didn't make the top 10 highest grossing of the summer. But it was still, this was very much a word of mouth movie. There wasn't a whole lot of promotion going on. But after the first probably 2 or 3 weeks of it being in theater, the internet exploded and everybody was like, "Oh wow, this is actually amazing. Everybody should go see this."
Yes.
And rightfully so. I've seen it a couple more times on Blu-ray since, and it is just a very smart, clever, fun action heist movie with great character moments, great script, great music. Obviously, the music is almost a character in itself.
Yes.
It's just a great movie.
Absolutely. My favourite part in there is, this was mentioned last week with Hunter as well. I'm pretty sure Hunter brought it, or it was the week before, it may have been. But when they're going through the planning of I believe it's the final heist, the one with Jamie Foxx is in there, and Baby's there, and he's got his headphones in, and he's tapping away, and finger drums as he who shall not be named is going telling everybody else what to do, and Jamie Foxx is in there and says, just one thing, how does he know what he's doing? And he turns around and says, "Baby, tell us," takes his headphones out, and he just proceeds to just
list it all off,
point by point by point. And in the end, he goes, "Yeah, okay then, fair enough." And puts his headphones back in, and away we go again. It's.
Yeah, my favorite moment of this movie is actually, it's hard to pick just one moment, but I think it is the moment where Christopher Plummer and Jamie Foxx are talking. And they're talking about calling off the heist because, somebody knows somebody's real name, and Jamie Foxx Kevin Spacey's character goes, "Oh, your name's only 4 letters," and Jamie Foxx goes, "Oh, Bats isn't my real name, Doc," and he just goes, "Well, it still is 4 letters, Leon," and just throws it right back in his face.
No, absolutely.
This is just there's great dialogue between characters. The music itself, it may not be songs that everybody's incredibly familiar with, but the way that every single time somebody turns the wheel of a car or somebody hits the gas, or every single car scene is edited perfectly to the second with every single beat of the music, and it's just beautiful.
No, absolutely. Yeah, they're great. It's a fantastic choice. With Edgar Wright, obviously, it's, as you say, he was on board to do Ant-Man, but politics and so on and so forth got in the way of that. I mean, I love Ant-Man as it is, so I'm
I absolutely do too.
Doubly happy that he's missed that, because I don't think it would have been anything like what it ended up with being. And we doubled up by getting Baby Driver in the deal as well.
Exactly. I'm in the exact same boat as you. I'm very. I was disappointed to see Edgar Wright go, but I was still happy to see Peyton Reed come on. I still really enjoyed Ant-Man when it came out, and we got something even better in Baby Driver coming out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, have you seen the Cornetto trilogy of his?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is a really one of his that I really enjoy too. The World's End I really like. Yeah, he's a director that I don't think has made a bad movie yet. No.
I mean, the Shaun of the Dead, I absolutely agree. Obviously, it's a very British. All three of the Cornetto ones are very British films. Obviously, with him being there, and Pegg and Frost and everything else, and it all basically coming from the Spaced TV show of his before that. Those. But you're right. He's not done a bad film.
No.
Yet, he's not got a huge amount of credits behind him, director-wise. But
yeah, he's not the kind of director who's just gonna take every single job no matter what. He's only made movies that he's very passionate about, that he has a lot that he's very hands-on in the entire process, from writing to directing to editing to post-production. He's definitely a very hands-on director, which is why he doesn't do as many movies, but the ones that are done, that he does put out, are very, very quality.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, that's great. So we'll move on. Sticking with the genres again, though. What's your favourite horror film?
Yeah, so horror is an interesting genre just because I don't watch a lot of horror movies, especially older horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
Halloween is one of the only older horror movies that I've seen. Psycho, obviously, as well, but like I haven't seen like a lot of the Friday the 13th. Haven't seen a lot of Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
Just because. To me, when I try to watch bits and pieces, they're just either really, really dated or really, really campy or here and there, and I just can't really get into them.
Yep.
So I'm a little bit more of a modern-ish horror fan than an older horror fan. Some that I thought about putting on here for more recently, things like It Follows or The Babadook or even It are all great movies that I thought about putting on. But the one I ended up putting on is from my favorite horror franchise that not a lot of people who know me, because people know that I don't like horror, but the Saw franchise is a franchise that I love up and down.
Okay.
Even when they're not very good movies, I still like them a lot. And I'm going with Saw 2 as the best of the Saw franchise. The first Saw is very, very contained. Pretty much the entire movie happens in one room.
Yep.
It's very good. I really enjoyed it. Really sets the tone for the franchise. But I think Saw 2 is where the franchise, 2 and 3 specifically, are where they really hit their stride. It's a little bit more open. There's a little bit more happening all at once. The traps get a little bit more inventive and a little bit more fun. We meet more characters. There's more crazy twists. There's just more everything. So Saw 2 is the one I'm going with. It's the one where with Donnie Wahlberg's character is first introduced when they're in the house.
Yep.
When all the victims are in the house playing to the game, and there's the neurotoxin going around. Tobin Bell just gives a eerie performance as the Jigsaw Killer. He's just sitting there trying to talk to Donnie Wahlberg the entire time, saying, "No, just stay here with me. Just trust me. Like, just talk with me and watch along, and it'll all work out." And Donnie Wahlberg's character clearly doesn't, and we see what that brings. By the end of the movie and into the next few. But yeah, Saw 2, I think, is really where the franchise is at its peak. The first 3, I think, are great. The rest of the Saw movies get a little bit campy, get a little bit more torture-y than the others, and take themselves not as seriously, which I think is a good thing as the franchise evolved.
Yeah.
But the second one, I think, is just a brilliant horror thriller, great movie.
Yeah. No, that's fine. It's as I'm sure you're aware, I'm not a massive horror fan. I the concept of it is fine, but the actual sitting down and watching them, I generally chicken out after 5 or 10 minutes. I've watched the first one and loved the first Saw. I think that the concept of it at the time was incredibly fresh, and it held your attention without looking behind your fingers or hiding behind the couch or the sofa on it. I remember watching the second one, but I can't remember a huge amount about it, and I don't think I've seen any of the others, if I'm being brutally honest. But then again, it's not my genre. So,
yeah.
The few things I do know is I know it was filmed all in one building. So the actual building that the detective was trying to rescue these people from, it was all filmed within that. There was no sound stage or anything like that. That's the building with filming in it.
Which really it really benefits the movie, because it really does feel. I mean, the first movie is very contained because it's all just in a bathroom. The second one, you're in more of a house. It's a little bit more expanded, but it still feels claustrophobic in a sense.
Yeah.
It still all feels like they are still contained, still trapped. So you kind of feel for the survivors, for the victims, as you're kind of following their story.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I know the actual Jigsaw puppet, they redid it from between the first and second because they had a bigger budget. The first one was controlled with sort of fishing wires and fishing line and wires to get it moving, and they were able to completely redo the puppet itself for the second one, and were able to add more into it and make it more remote control and everything else with it. So again, it's another one that's I'm always wondering, going into spoiler wise with it, if Jigsaw dies of cancer, is it in the end? Does it get killed
well,
with it?
he has cancer, so
Right.
I
mean,
Jigsaw
for a film that Saw 2 was 2005.
5, yeah. The first Saw was
we're
04,
13 years
so
old. Spoilers
exactly.
be
The
damned.
franchise is old enough, so the character played by Tobin Bell, I can't think of the real character name, but who becomes the Jigsaw Killer.
Right.
He is diagnosed with cancer, goes to see a bunch of different doctors, tries a bunch of different things, nothing works out. Obviously, we learn a lot of this throughout the franchise. It's not like it's all just an expositional dump. The Saw chronology is a little bit messy.
Okay.
But he's essentially dying of cancer. He tries to commit suicide at one point, and he's at his low point, and that's when he becomes this sort of creepy serial killer trying to teach people the value of life. We learn in Saw 3, which is spoiler alert, at the end of Saw 3 is where the character dies.
Right.
And it's actually because Saw 2 and 3 are happening at 3 and 4 are happening at the same moment in time.
Oh, okay.
So that's like the big twist at the end of Saw 4 is that 3 and 4 are happening at the exact same moment in time.
Okay.
But he does die at the end of 3. He's actually killed. He's dying of cancer. There's this really gory scene where he has to get this like brain surgery done. I'm not a fan of that scene. But he is trying to test his protege, who we meet in the first and second Saw films, played by, I can't think of the actress's name right now, but Shawnee Smith, who plays Amanda.
Yeah.
That's the character name.
Okay.
So she's sort of his protege. She's the first person we ever see in that like really iconic like bear trap. And yeah, he dies at the end of the third one. He does not die from the cancer though. He's killed by a different character. He basically gets his like neck chopped open with a buzzsaw. But that's where the Jigsaw character dies, but then we see he has other proteges and he had other games set up before he died, and that's kind of how the franchise is able to continue even after killing their main antagonist after the third film.
Okay.
The franchise basically just continues with he had all these other people working for him the whole time and things like that.
Okay. Right. Okay, that kind of makes sense. Yeah, as I say, I'm not a massive.
It doesn't make a ton of sense, but like I said, the films become much more self-aware once you get to 3, 4, 5, etc. All the way up through 7 and the newest Jigsaw. They really know what they're going for.
Right.
They know that it's just campy torture movies.
Yeah.
They don't really try to make it a true horror or thriller movie like the first two are.
Okay. All right. Obviously, the director Darren Boosman.
Yep, Darren
there we go.
Boosman.
Yes, nailed it. I know he did 2, 3, and 4. He directed 2, 3, and 4 with Saw, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He did all those 3 of those, and
obviously James Wan, probably most well known for the 2 Conjurings,
yes.
for Insidious. A very well known modern horror director. I think the original Saw was his first feature film. He originally made it as a short.
Yeah.
He and one of his friends wrote it as a short film and made it as a very, very low-budget short film, the first Saw.
Yeah.
And then once the studios saw the potential, they greenlit the first Saw movie, which came out in 2004. And then, Darren Boosman kind of took over the mantle and really turned the franchise into... He just expanded it more than James Wan did. Expanded it into, in my opinion, the best one, 2, and then 3 and 4, where the franchise started to take its turn.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. But that's every day's a school day, and I'm happy I know a little bit more about the Saw trilogy series now. I might be able to answer one question about them now if it ever comes up. Right. Moving along. Let's get out of the horror. What's your favourite drama?
Yeah, this is
broad category.
This is almost an impossible question because there are hundreds, if not thousands, of amazing dramas. So this is one where I had a lot on my nomination list. Things like Good Will Hunting, The Green Mile, Shawshank Redemption, Schindler's List, Godfather 1 and 2, Casablanca, The Dark Knight, The Departed. Reading my nominations, I realized more and more that Cody Newberry and I are basically the same film fan. Because I heard him talk about The Departed, and it was just my favorite thing ever, because that's my favorite Scorsese movie, too. Yeah. But the drama that I am going for, again, I don't know if I can necessarily say it's my favorite, but it's the one that I want to talk about the most.
That's fine.
And it's the 32nd Best Picture winner, La La Land.
Okay.
Which is a movie that I really, really enjoy, from a director who's at least Whiplash and La La Land I have really, really enjoyed. Damien Chazelle. This movie has two of the best working performers in Hollywood right now, and Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone. Yep. Their chemistry is absolutely off the charts in every single scene. From what I know of the film, quite a bit of their relationship, of what we see on film, a decent amount of that dialogue is unscripted, and they just have a point to get to, and they have to improv themselves there.
Yeah.
But yeah, two amazing performers, an incredible score, incredible songs and soundtrack the entire time, and yeah, just the movie makes you care almost instantly about these two characters and their love story, and it is just an amazing movie that I really enjoy.
Okay, fantastic. I've not seen it. It's on my planner, on my DVR to watch. Mm-hmm. But then again, so many other films at the moment. In between my, DVD collection, I've got 6 or 7 or 8 films still in wrap that I've not got around to actually watch. It was, I like that. I'll watch that. I know I'll like it, and then never got around to watching it. La La Land's on my DVR, and it will get watched at some point. I mean, I'm slowly but surely getting through another Ryan Gosling one of Blade Runner 2049, but that's taken 3 sittings so far.
That's a long one. That's not one that you can necessarily sit down and watch a 3.5-hour movie. No. Although I thought about talking about both Blade Runner or Blade Runner 2049 actually in this list, because I'm a huge fan of both of those movies.
Mm-hmm. I love the first. The second one, it's taken a little more hard work to get through, but
yeah, it's a little bit. Yeah. But yeah, La La Land is just an amazing movie. The script is so good. I mean, it was nominated for 14 Oscars.
Yeah.
Or sorry, 14. That's right. Nominated for 14. It won, I want to say 6.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, it's including briefly Best Picture. It is just a really, really great exploration of anybody who has been trying to chase a dream, and that sounds a little bit sappy, but it's a drama. It's what it is. There are comedic moments, but overall it's a drama. And I don't want to spoil too much, but the story being told is just one that wraps you in through the music and through the world so quickly, and through the visuals and the aesthetic of it all. It's just a movie that I find myself coming back to all the time.
Okay, is it a musical, or is it?
Yeah,
Is it one where it's talking song piece, or is it the likes of Les Mis, where it's the talking is singing?
Yeah, so it's definitely more of the first kind. It's not that every single bit of dialogue is a song.
Right.
There's a lot of amazing songs in here. Another Day of Song, Audition, Fools Who Dream, Lovely Night. This entire soundtrack is like a 10 out of 10 basically for me. I love every single part of the soundtrack. But yeah, Ryan Gosling plays an amazing job at being a struggling musician. Emma Stone, a struggling actress, and they just kind of find each other at the right moment in each other's lives when they need each other the most, and they're there for each other. And I think that's really a great message, is that you can find people who are there when you need them to be there.
Yeah, that's great. As I say, I can't add too much onto this. I've not seen it. So, no, we'll move on to there and move on to one that I probably can put a little bit of through my tongue there. What's your favourite comedy?
Yeah, so the other two that I thought about doing were Dodgeball: A True Underdog Story, which is one of the funniest sports movies ever made because Jason Bateman, or is that Jason Bateman? Yeah, it is Jason Bateman. As the commentator is like just I love that movie. But also
Yeah.
Back to the Future is one of the most watchable, quotable comedies. Like so clever. The one I actually ended up going with is a fantastic comedy that is, in my opinion, the most rewatchable comedy of all time,
Yep.
and that is Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
I'm doing myself a little dance here because
Yeah.
I absolutely adore this is where mine and your list coincide. My favourite comedy of all time. It is for a film which was such a small budget and blatantly plays on that small budget. It's such a hilariously perfect film.
Yeah. I was trying to look up the budget the other day. I was trying to convert it to U.S. dollars. I think it was made on, I want to say like 300,000 U.S. dollars. And granted,
Probably even less than that.
yeah,
Just under £230,000.
yeah. So, and that was somewhere. I mean, this was released, I believe, in '75.
Yeah,
So obviously, inflation and all that. But still, that's a very, very low budget. You have the same actor playing practically 8 different roles.
Yep.
There's just so much about this movie that is so watchable. You can discover new things every time you watch this too. Like it's not until the 6th or 7th viewing that you realize in practically every shot there's somebody like bashing a cat against the wall in like background of every single scene, or like the opening credits where they're talking about moose and fake German subtitles, and they're talking about firing everybody who's talking about the moose, and
Yes.
how the ending of this film is literally the definition of a cop out because they didn't have enough money to finish the actual movie, so they literally copped out.
Absolutely. It's from you say the opening credits where it's the Swedish, and let's talk about the fjords and the moose and no, these have been fired, and then talking about some more, and the people that are responsible for firing those responsible for have been fired, and they ended up being talking about llamas and Mexican and Peru or whatever it is,
Exactly.
and then the cold open into another film.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Mm.
yeah, it's just a hilarious movie. There's so many running gags. There's so many iconic scenes. I mean, obviously the running gags of banning the coconuts because they didn't have enough money to afford horses.
Yep.
Or the running gags of like when there's somebody trying to run over the top of a hill, you just repeat that shot about 6 times, keeping cutting between different perspectives, which is just objectively hilarious.
Yeah, that part with John Cleese where he's storming the castle, and it goes on, and you're there, you go, oh, yeah, this is funny. Oh, yeah, this is funny. And then you're going 3, 4, 5, 6 more times, and you're like, yeah, and then all of a sudden, bang, he's there, and he's killed the first one.
He's killed like 16 people, yeah. And then, iconic scenes like the Black Knight. The battle with the Black Knight is just one of the most iconic comedy, like, medieval battle. It's tis but a scratch, so quotable. I used to be able to, I don't know all of it anymore, but I used to be able to recite in full the entire Bridge of Doom scene at the end of this movie.
Oh, God, yeah.
Towards the end, because it's the old man from scene 24.
Yep.
Or you have the rabbit that you have to kill with the holy hand grenade of Antioch, and this entire movie is just so meta and so self-aware while also having really hilarious moments. The Knights of Ni wanting a shrubbery, and Sir not appearing in this film.
The Sir not appearing in this film, the baby, that is, oh God, I think it's Palin's baby child, or one of the python's baby. The picture on there, the Sir not appearing in this, that's the picture of one of the python's kids. I cannot remember right now which one it is.
I did not know that, but that's awesome.
Yeah, that bridge one is. Ask me the questions, Bridgekeeper. I'm not afraid.
Yeah.
What is your name? What is your quest, and what's your favourite colour? But then
what's the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow, and what's the capital of
European?
something?
I don't know, and off he goes.
Yeah.
That and again, you're talking about repeating jokes through it. That one where they're talking about the swallow is repeated time and time again in there. You've got it at the beginning, from pretty much the very first actual scene when he's coming up across the first castle, to the knight talking about is she a witch? When you first introduce him, he's trying to tie a coconut to a bird.
Yeah, to a swallow. Yeah.
It's
And that witch scene is just also hilarious. Like, he turned me into a newt. I got better. Like,
here's the question though: do you think she's a witch?
She weighed the same as a duck, which means she's made of wood. So therefore, yes, we could build a bridge out of her to find out. But bridges can also be made out of stone. So. No, yeah.
For me, I mean, I asked this. I was on Dan Allen's 52 films, most important films of what they matter. Me and Jeremy Adams did the Holy Grail episode of this, and I asked the same question. And it's at the end where the absolutely absurd logic comes through, and what else floats? A duck. If she weighs the same as the duck, at the end there, she turns around and says, "It's a fair cop."
Yeah.
So yeah, she's a witch.
Yeah. Who are you? Who's so wise in the way of science? Like,
yeah. But my favourite one, favourite scene of this, without a shadow of a doubt, it's the French Taunters.
Oh, absolutely.
Two of the most hilariously absurd cinematic insults. Your mother was a hamster and your father smelt of elderberries. And I don't want to talk to you no more, you empty-headed animal food trough wiper. I fart in your general direction.
Your mother was a hamster
and your father smelled of elderberries.
Yeah.
Those there are just... I quote them time after time. I call my 8-year-old... No, 9. He's 9 now. I call my 9-year-old son... I quote that to him weekly.
Yeah. No, that... the French Taunter is just hilarious. I mean, you have the Trojan Rabbit a little bit later on, and the entire movie in general is just so quotable, so rewatchable. You can find a new joke every single time, and it's so memorable. Like, with a comedy, you want to be able to sit down and watch a movie and really enjoy yourself, but you want to be able to come back and revisit it all the time, and that's absolutely something you can do with this film.
Absolutely. And it is being quoted in films even now. The Ready Player One, that had the holy hand grenade.
Oh yeah,
that hand grenade in the book is the holy hand grenade of Antioch. In the Ready Player One book, it's actually given the full title of holy hand grenade of Antioch. I think they couldn't quite get the rights.
Yeah, probably
they needed to get it, so it's just the holy hand grenade. But anyone that knows the film knows that's the Python man.
Yeah, that's what killed the demon rabbit.
Yeah.
With the teeth, who can leap and look at the bones.
Pointy teeth. I mean, I have literally spoke for about an hour and 20 minutes with Jeremy Adams about this, so we'll move on. Else, this will be an epic length podcast. Absolutely, perfect choice for this. Superb. Keeping with the comedy and happy themes, what's a film that makes you happy?
There were a couple that came to mind right away. A few of them were sort of like underdog stories. Something like Rudy or Hugo is a movie I really like, or Begin Again is another one. But the one I really ended up going with is my favorite sports movie of all time, and that is The Sandlot. Which is the 1993 baseball semi-comedy family film. This is a movie that I rewatched endlessly as a kid. My grandpa is incredibly into baseball. My dad really likes baseball. This is a movie we just watched all the time. So many memorable characters, so quotable. You're killing me, Smalls, or you want some more, or forever. And like, there are just all these great scenes. James Earl Jones, Dennis Leary, amazing characters like and Benny and Ham, and this is just an ensemble kids movie that is so nostalgic for me, and I love it top to bottom.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it. I'll be brutally honest. When did it come out?
92, 93? I think 93.
I don't think I've seen it. Then again, with the American sports films, not a lot of them transfer over here because although they are, and NFL has got a massive following over here. Baseball is getting bigger. but the films haven't got that appeal to come over with it. So it's missed me completely. This one has. I don't know. I mean, I'm not even sure which sports it is that it's. that's how little I know about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just about a group of kids who like to play baseball, and they have this really small, raggedy field that they call the Sandlot, and they just go out and play every single day. It's about this new kid who moves to town, and basically about his summer becoming friends with all these guys who play baseball. And he steals his stepdad's ball to play with. It's signed by Babe Ruth, and he doesn't know who that is. And they lose it to this like monster dog that like chews it up and tears it up. Whose owner's played by James Earl Jones, and. Yeah, they just kind of... It's just the hijinks of this group of friends just playing baseball over the summer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've not seen it. It might be one that my kids will probably like it. They're like most sportish type ones, so I'll see if I can pick that up and see if I can plonk them and myself down in front of that. Because it actually has turned up on a couple of Schmodown questions. I'm just like, Sandlot, never seen it. I've got no idea with this. Everyone seems to say, how do you not know what the dog's called in Sandlot? And I've never seen the film.
Yeah, that makes sense. And of course, in this category of making me happy, I could throw Lord of the Rings in there. Like, I'm just kind of... This goes without saying, pretty much every single one of these categories, I can try to figure out a Middle-earth movie to put in there. So I won't say it pretty much from now on, but I can absolutely put that in almost all of these categories.
No, absolutely. When I did the very first one of these, I interviewed myself. I probably should have got someone to do it for me. But yeah, I was like... No, I could, if I wanted to, I could drop a Star Wars into every single one of these. Sandlot, as I say, I'll take your word for it, is a good film. I've not seen it. I will endeavour to watch it because those questions are coming up more and more. Okay. Right, we'll flip it on its head, though. What's the film that makes you sad?
Yeah, so there are a couple to choose from here, but once again, I went with a little bit more of a recent pick. Movie saw in theaters, nominated for a bunch of Oscars against La La Land, actually, and that's Manchester by the Sea. Directed by, I believe, Kenneth Lonergan. Originally supposed to be directed by Matt Damon, but he stepped down to just produce it. Stars Casey Affleck in a career-defining, Oscar-winning role. Michelle Williams, just heartbreakingly, amazingly acted is this movie. It's not as much a story about like a narrative journey that some character goes through or anything like that. It is just more of a character study. It is following the life of one person and the horror that they endure in their life. Lucas Hedges, an Oscar-nominated role for him as well. He's starting to pop up in more things. He was in 3 Billboards this last year. Manchester by the Sea is just a heartbreaking story. There are 2 or 3 moments when I saw this in theaters that I was just completely in tears. Yeah.
No, it's another one. This is, I think this is the second time this has come up on someone's list. I think so. It's definitely been mentioned, if not in someone's list. And that's another one that's on my DVR to watch. I've not got around to watching it yet.
I definitely... I'll try not to spoil it. I mean, I definitely won't spoil it, because there are some scenes that just take you by storm, and just suddenly you are completely just floored. This movie is just haunting. There's just tragedy and grief, and it's just a story about humanity. So I really, really enjoy this movie. It won Best Original Screenplay at the Oscars, nominated for Best Director, nominated for Best Supporting Actress, Best Picture, won Best Actor. Like, this is just a great, heartbreaking movie. I mean, it's not one that you're, like, chilling on a Saturday night drinking with some buddies and you want to throw on Manchester by the Sea. But if you're in the mood for it, this is one that can just break you down, and it's really worth the watch still.
No. Okay. I feel real bad about these because you bring these up and it's like, I can't add anything to these conversations. Although I have made up for it with the Holy Grail.
Oh, definitely. We could talk. We could talk Monty Python and the Holy Grail for. We literally could talk for an hour about that
No,
movie.
absolutely. One of these days, I might actually do a spin-off series of these and just do right. We're picking one film and let's talk about it. But there's plenty of people that do that, so I might just, as long as I've got people to want to talk about the favourite ones, we'll go that way. Okay, we'll move on though. Unfortunately, sorry, Manchester by the Sea, but give me a film that you know the entire script of.
All right. So once again, I could throw in Lord of the Rings here.
Not Lord of the Rings.
I basically know all 22 and a half hours of Lord of the Rings and Hobbit extended editions. But besides that, an individual movie is a great movie, one of the most quotable movies of all time, and that's The Princess Bride.
Oh, yes.
This is a movie that I was definitely the right generation as far as, obviously I didn't see this in theaters or anything, but this is one that my sister and I, every single day on VHS, this is one that we watched without fail every day. This is a movie that made me fall in love with movies and with storytelling and with fantasy storytelling specifically. Just amazingly written characters. I know practically the entire script of this movie. In fact, for an audition for a play I did a couple of years ago, I played both parts in the Battle of Wits scene, both Vizzini and Man in Black. I have memorized that entire part. This is just a movie that I love, that I've seen so many times, it'd be hard for me to not know the whole script of.
Yeah, no, it's... This film pops up in some of the most bizarre ways for me as well. I was watching the it was HBO, I think it actually did it, the Andre the Giant documentary that mentioned him. Obviously his part that was in this, heartbreaking for him who was there. Obviously he was Fezzik.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep.
For such a big guy there, he was struggling so much that when he would catch Robin Wright, yes, it's Robin Wright, isn't it? He couldn't do it, so she had to be lowered by wire down to him in slow motion to have it as he catched him. He's great. I'm a massive wrestling fan myself, from that era when I first sort of came into it, and he was a massive part of that, and then seeing him in a film, and I was like, oh, that was the first time I'd actually come across someone crossing over into something like that. But it's the Carrie Elwes again, coming back to the Saw films, obviously not Saw 2. That was a complete surprise because I knew him from this, and then seeing him in the first Saw film, because I'd not seen him in anything else. They were the only two things I'd seen him in. Apart from them, when looking back at it, I realised he was in Men in Tights as well.
Yep.
But yeah, so no, sorry, I'm blabbing on about myself about this. Tell me, what is it about this?
So, like I said, this is just a movie that I revisit practically every month. It's a movie that I have seen thousands of times when I was younger. Not only is it a really great movie, but the script itself has really memorable quotes. Things like just the simple "as you wish" line, or the Battle of Wits scene, or you have the rhyming stuff with Inigo and Fezzik on the boat, or all of the quotes by Carrie Elwes' character Wesley. Life is pain, highness. Anybody who says differently is selling something. There are just great quotes all around. It is an incredibly memorable movie. I have also read the book of this movie. The movie is better. There is also a sequel book, which is a little bit weird. But I also really like how not only is this just like a great fantasy movie, but it's also a story of the grandfather telling the son to his the story, reading the book itself to his grandson. So it's not just a fantasy movie; it's a movie within a storytelling aspect, which is why I really gravitated to this movie, is because it's not just a movie presented as a fantasy film; it's also just a story about storytelling.
Yes. No, absolutely. I mean, as you say, obviously the number one quote from it is, "My name is Indigo Montoya. You killed my father, prepare to die." Mandy Patinkin, Mandy,
Patinkin, yeah,
that's him. He quoted a few years back now, says he gets 2 or 3 strangers every day quoting that line at him, walking down the street.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's got to be pretty weird for a film that's 30-something years old.
31.
Years
It came out in
old.
'87,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's got to be quite bizarre.
Yeah, that would get annoying after a while, is what I would think.
After the first couple of people, let alone the first couple of years, let alone the first couple of decades.
Exactly, yeah.
Robin Wright, another coming back again from even popping up now in 2049.
Yeah, 2049. She was in Wonder Woman.
Yes.
Definitely still finding some strong, powerful roles. Even though, she's great in this as Princess Buttercup for sure. But it's good to still see her pop up in a few things here and there.
And it's my wife's upstairs, so it's fine. Growing old like a fine wine. She's getting better with age.
Yeah.
But her and Carrie Elwes, they were smitten. They were actually had the totally for each other during the film. Elwes has said that he couldn't concentrate on much else after his first encounter. It was like thunderbolts apparently when those two first met each other.
And it really shows on screen, even just during that opening 5 minutes where we learn about how they met and how they were supposed to get married and how he was killed by the Dread Pirate robber. Just the opening of that film, you can really tell.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I remember watching this film when I was quite young, and then always had it in the back of my mind as being a good one, with a great sword fighting scene in it.
Yes, definitely.
But then it kind of I didn't hear too much about it. But nowadays you hear more and more people saying what a great film it is and how it's what a classic and it stood the test of time. It's been such a while since I've actually watched it. I might actually have to. I don't actually own it. I might have to get that as well.
Yeah, it's definitely one that people have rediscovered as of late, and I think part of that is also because my generation and the people slightly older than me were really the ones who it was very much a daily VHS viewing. So as we are getting older,
yes.
And our voices are becoming a little bit more public, we are reminding people to go back and rediscover this one.
No, absolutely, and that the iconic fight scene at the top there, where it's left-handed then right-handed. It's such a.
That's my favorite scene in the entire movie.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, great. We'll jump on though. Who's your favorite director?
Yeah, this is a tough one because there are so many people who are going to come on and say correct answers of Spielberg or Scorsese or Tarantino or Coppola these are Hitchcock or anybody. These are all right answers.
Yeah.
But I wanted to come on and talk about somebody a little bit different, and I didn't choose Peter Jackson, even though I love what he does, even after what he's done with Heavenly Creatures and Lovely Bones. But I actually want to talk about a director named Matthew Vaughn.
Yes.
Who is a relatively recent-ish director. He started his first movie, I think, was in 2003 or 2004, called Layer Cake.
Daniel
and
Craig.
That's not, Daniel Craig. That's not one a lot of people have seen. I really enjoy it.
I love it.
It's not extremely critically remembered, but it's still a movie that I enjoy. But then you look at the rest of his filmography. I mean, it's not like he's out here directing since the 60s or 70s like Spielberg or Scorsese, but I think he's knocked out of the park every single time, in my opinion. Layer Cake, Stardust, another fantastic fantasy film that I love.
Yeah.
The first Kick-Ass, X-Men First Class, which is my favorite X-Men movie, and then the 2 Kingsman movies. Some people may say that Golden Circle isn't great. I personally still really love it, and I adore the first Kingsman movie. So with him, I'll take quality over quantity. I think in Scorsese, Tarantino, Spielberg, those are all directors, in Coppola even as well. Those are all directors I think you can poke holes in. I think there's 4 or 5 movies, specifically in Scorsese and Spielberg, that you can point to as significantly lower quality than the rest of their filmography.
Yeah.
In my opinion, there's not a hole you can poke in Matthew Vaughn's filmography. I love every single one of his movies. He brings such a unique style to modern different genres, from a spy action movie with The Kingsman to a fantasy adventure story with Stardust, to the comic book genre with Kick-Ass. In general, this is just a great director.
No, absolutely. He's. I will agree with you with the fact he's not. Whereas, as you say, the likes of Coppola and Spielberg has got drops in quality. When he's directed as many films as Spielberg has, and not got the drops in quality, don't get me wrong. I agree 100%. He's not directed a bad film yet. He's 6 for 6.
Mm-hmm.
When he's on to like 28, 29, 30, and still without
exactly.
the drops, then I'll give it. As you say, Layer Cake way back in
I think it was 04.
No, Layer Cake was Layer Cake was 04. He'd been on, and you could tell the influence on it. He was a producer in his Guy Ritchie, who's a massive close friend with for years and years.
Yeah.
He was a producer on Lock, Stock and Snatch.
Yeah, both movies were the influence you can see.
Yeah, massively influenced how Layer Cake comes on. Daniel Craig there, obviously, way before he was Bond and way before all this drops into it on there. And I really, really enjoy Layer Cake. I mean, it's great to hear someone else, especially a non-Brit, because it's very much it's a British film in the vein of Lock, Stock and Snatch, although Brad Pitt gave Snatch the international appeal.
And I've only seen Layer Cake once.
Yeah.
But I still really enjoy it. Tom Hardy is really fun in that movie.
Yeah.
I think Sally Hawkins is in that movie. Layer Cake, definitely not incredibly mass appealing to a worldwide audience like something like Kingsman or X-Men is.
Yeah.
But still a movie of his that I really respect and really enjoy.
Yeah, it's Michael Gambon, who's obviously a massive British film, obviously with Layer Cake here. But when you got Tom Hardy and Daniel Craig in two guys that have since gone on to do massive things in Hollywood and stars in there, it really does. It brings up the eye that Matthew Vaughn has got with this coming out. I mean, my favourite one of the ones that he did is X-Men First Class, though. I do like the X-Men films, not so much X3, but even that's got its parts that I quite enjoy. Most of that is Hugh Jackman, but there you go.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm within the sort of fan trivia community, I'm known as a solid geek player in X-Men. I love, there's things to love in every single X-Men movie.
Yes.
But to me, X-Men First Class is the best X-Men movie over X2, over Days of Future Past. X-Men First Class is just so unique while also still falling under the X-Men franchise, and it still feels like an X-Men movie, but it also feels like a Matthew Vaughn movie.
Yes.
I love every decision made in that movie. I think Michael Fassbender is brilliant in every single way in that movie. The McAvoy, the cast is just amazing. Kevin Bacon and everybody is great in that movie. So not only can we see Matthew Vaughn do sort of smaller independent movies like Layer Cake and Kick-Ass, but we also see him come out the gate and just knock a big budget comic book movie out of the park.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jennifer Lawrence before she was dialing it in Apocalypse and everything else.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, no, great. As I say, he's 6 for 6 when he's been able to get the length of career that the likes have got, and if he's still not got the any drops, then he will rightly be up in the pantheon. The beauty about this, as you say, is some people say the right answers is this. The beauty about it, this is your list. This is your choice.
Yeah.
We'll come to some later on, maybe, that you'll get a little bit of feedback on.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
But as it stands, no, he's 6 for 6, and rightly so. He's a good director.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Okay, then let's go back in time. What's your favourite childhood film?
There's a lot that I had to choose from here. I am a little bit of a younger person, obviously. So there's quite a few. The movie that really got me into acting is James and the Giant Peach that I considered putting on this list. Early 2000s Disney animated movies are ones that I saw in theaters and grew up with, like Treasure Planet and Atlantis, and the animated TV Hobbit movie, just because I'm a nerd for Middle Earth. What I'm actually going with is a 90s animated film called Balto.
Heard of it? Don't think I've seen it.
Yeah, which is 94, I think. 94. I don't know if that is right. But yeah, it's got Kevin Bacon as a voice actors in this movie, Bob Hoskins, Bridget Fonda, Phil Collins, the great musician, obviously.
Yep.
This is a looking back on it, it is not an amazing movie.
Yeah.
There are definitely some holes in it for sure. But it's relatively short, and it's this adventure animated movie. Oh, excuse me. It's about this half dog, half wolf in Alaska who isn't really accepted by the sled dogs, but in the sequels, he tries to find his wolf family, but there's direct-to-video sequels. But in this one, he's very much an outcast, and he's got this goose named Boris, voiced by Bob Hoskins, who looks after him. But eventually, when there's a crisis, he ends up. Balto ends up being the hero who saves the day. He was the outcast, but now he's the only sled dog brave enough to go try to get this cure because there's a disease spreading. Like I said, it's not an amazing movie. The animation definitely is subpar compared to other mid-90s animated movies.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're up against movies like Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King, it's hard to have great animation.
Yeah.
But it's a movie that I really enjoy. It's one that I wish more people would rediscover. So if you're going to take something away from this, you or people listening, if you haven't seen Balto, go check it out. See if you like it. It's one that I really enjoy from my childhood. My uncle was a sled dog racer in Alaska, so I watched this movie with him all the time. So this is a movie that I definitely loved as a kid, and I still really enjoy it now.
As I say, this is based on a true story, isn't it? That's
It
pretty much
is,
the
yeah.
only thing I know about the whole thing. It's pretty much based on a true story.
Yeah, the first 5 minutes of the movie are live action.
Okay.
And it is this I want to say grandmother or mother and her young daughter or niece or something like that. It's these two family members, and they're walking through this park, and then they see this statue of Balto, and then the grandmother, the aunt or the mother, I forget how they're related,
right.
but she goes in, and then the actual animated movie starts, and she tells her daughter, her niece, the story of Balto. So it is very much based on true story, obviously escalated because there's talking sled dogs shunning a half wolf, half sled dog.
Yeah.
But the story of this outcast wolf dog hybrid mutt thing breed who saves the small town from this disease because he's runs out and gets it. That is very much a true story.
Right. Okay. I thought I was going to say, I wanted to get that right in my head there. I'm pretty sure I had. The only thing I know about that is as if it was there because that whole original 20s run that they did birthed the modern sled run. I think I've seen it on some Discovery Channel program about that. The useless fact that sticks in my head. Okay, right. We'll keeping in the same kind of vein of that. What's your favourite animated film of all time?
Yeah, this was really, really tough. I am a huge fan of the animation genre in general, and there are so many to choose from, so many that I really wanted to choose. I hope you don't mind that I just run them down real quick.
No, by all means.
But Fern Gully, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, Anastasia, The Incredibles, Shrek 2, there were so many that I wanted to choose. A lot of these super underrated, some of them very well known, but things like Fern Gully and Anastasia, people don't really revisit that often.
Well, people revisit Fern Gully every time they watch Avatar.
That's true. That is very true. It's basically the same movie,
Yeah.
only Ferngully is better.
Yes.
But the one I'm going with is from 1999, The Iron Giant, directed by Brad Bird, who went on to again, this is another director who not that many films, but almost all of them are perfect. The Iron Giant, The Incredibles, Ratatouille, Mission Impossible, Ghost Protocol, Incredibles 2, Tomorrowland, which we won't talk about. But other than that, pretty much A-plus director all around. But The Iron Giant is a movie that takes place in sort of the 50s and 60s in the midst of sort of the Red Scare, Cold War kind of era. And it's about this just young kid named Hogarth who doesn't really have any friends, and she just kind of lives with his mom, and suddenly the Iron Giant comes, and he sort of befriends him, and it's got great themes and tells a great story, puts off a great message about how you can find friends in the most unlikely of people. Hogarth teaches the Iron Giant that you don't have to be a weapon. You weren't made to be something. You can choose your own destiny, and the Iron Giant obviously teaches Hogarth some valuable lessons too. So overall, this is just a really heartwarming film. It gets sort of dark at some points, but it's a good, action-friendly, great animated movie that I just love.
Yeah, it's. I've seen it. Yay! Finally, one of these that's popped up that I've actually seen. Not for a little while, but yeah, when it hit me, it's although it is, it's animated and it's a kids' film. It's one of those that translates over. The adults have something that they can watch and take out of when they're watching it with their children.
Definitely, yeah.
Fantastic.
This is definitely not just a kids movie. This is definitely has universal themes that anybody can get out of it. Groot himself, Vin Diesel voices the Iron Giant. The score actually is a score I really love from this movie. It's actually done by Michael Kamen the year before he composed the score for the first X-Men movie. Okay. So in back-to-back years, he does this and then X-Men, which is just incredible to me.
No, it's really good. As you say, Brad Bird. He went literally. He's gone from strength to strength from this. He's one that I can't wait to see him where he goes next.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right. I think he's destined for a lot of good things if he keeps making the choices that he makes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he hasn't done. Like I said, he hasn't done a ton of theatrically released films. This was his first one, but almost everything he's done is knocked out of the park. He really has done well, very, very well in the animated genre, just from Iron Giant, Incredibles, Ratatouille, and Incredibles 2. This is a director who definitely has a very bright future.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. We'll move on to one that we get to, and normally we get said and we move on to. So, what's your favourite quote?
Yeah, so this is really tough. There were about 100 Lord of the Rings quotes going through my mind, but I didn't pick one of them. I picked a movie, kind of a classic movie that not a lot of people have seen, and I haven't even seen in a very long time, but it's just a quote I really like. It's from the movie Harvey, which is a Jimmy Stewart movie from, I believe, the 60s.
Oh, God, yes.
And the quote is... it's basically the main character played by Jimmy Stewart called his name is Elwood, and he's basically reminiscing something his mother always told him, which is, in this life you can be oh so smart or oh so pleasant. For years I was smart, I recommend pleasant. Which is just a quote I've always really found interesting and I've always liked. It's just something I've always connected to, sort of telling the message that intelligence isn't everything if you can't interact with people, if you can't enjoy human connection in the moment, which, movies are obviously, they're made to make money, they're made for escapism, they're made for people to watch, but ultimately films are also made to explore themes of us as people and to teach lessons and things like that. So that's just a quote that's always resonated with me.
Okay, there's not much you can say once you're followed by a quote that is good as a life lesson as well as good for being in the film that's in there. Okay, right. Yeah, as I say, it's one that's good. It is a good quote, and it is one that you can then take on with. We'll move on. Who's your favourite actor or actress?
Yeah, so I have an actor that I'm just going to say, and we're going to move on, but the one that I submitted to you to talk about is the actress. My favorite actor is Andy Serkis.
Yeah.
Who has done not only brilliant work in motion capture, but also live action. He's a brilliant actor. But the actress that I want to talk about, in my opinion, the best actress working today is Jessica Chastain.
Oh, yes.
Who has been in a ton of stuff, made her start in television, really, and then came to film in sort of the late 2000s with some smaller movies, but has really recently come to the forefront. She was great in The Help. She was a voice in the third Madagascar movie, and then she starts starring in movies like Zero Dark 30, and Mama, and Interstellar, and The Martian, and just amazing movies. Most recently in The Zookeeper's Wife and Molly's Game, which is a crime she was not nominated for an Oscar for Molly's Game. She was great in last year's 2 years ago now, Miss Sloane. She's very good in. So this is a twice Academy Award nominated actress for The Help and for Zero Dark 30. She is just incredible and really just getting her start in movies, so I cannot wait to see where her career goes next. And it's a crime Meryl Streep was nominated over her.
But then again, it's Meryl Streep, so she only has to stick her head through a door and she'll get nominated. So
exactly, I can't expect anything differently, but that doesn't mean I can't be salty about it.
No, that's a fair point. Fair point, well made. I've missed Molly's Game, which I pulled out myself because I love poker, and the story is one that appeals to me, and it's one that I will hunt down and watch at some point. I missed it when it was in theatres, but that is one I will watch.
It's one of the best biopics in the last couple of years. Obviously written by Aaron Sorkin, one of the most recognizable writers working today.
Yeah, I mean, he's the guy. He wrote my favourite TV series of all time, West Wing.
Yeah, wrote West Wing.
That for me is TV perfection. Well, that's another story.
Yeah. He wrote the play A Few Good Men was based off of.
Yes.
Wrote The Social Network. He writes Steve Jobs. This is actually Aaron Sorkin's directorial debut with Molly's Game. It's his first time directing, and he does a great job. He, as a director, keeps it very contained and focused on the characters. And really shines as a writer through Jessica Chastain, who delivers his dialogue and his narration and is just prettily. So she has been in some amazing roles. I mean, like I said, Interstellar and Miss Sloane and The Help and Zero Dark 30 she was just breakout in. Yes. So I'm really excited to see where she goes. It seems like over the last couple of years she's been sticking to those sort of hard, maybe Oscar bait dramas. So I think once she wins an Oscar, which I think she will do in the next couple of years, I'm excited to see where she moves next.
Yeah. I mean, she has got Huntsman: The Winter's War in there in 2016, so not all hard-hitting Oscar bait films in there. No, I did like her, and it's not one that a lot of people pick up and like, but Lawless back in 2012. I've got a soft spot for that film.
Mm-hmm. That's actually one I haven't seen. I've seen like clips and bits of it, but I have not seen the full film of that one.
Yeah, no, it's another one. Tom Hardy made another appearance on this podcast now. It's good. I mean, I enjoy it, and obviously she's good in there. But yeah, as you say, she's very much. She's one of those that always seems to. She's very smart with what she's picking now. She knows what she's capable of, and that she's got the right presence and reputation within the industry to be able to pick those roles that is enhancing her every time.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, that's great. Right, we get to the one that I always look forward to. Um, the one that I will at some point get a massive buzzer and a klaxon alarm ready to go on. But what is your most overrated film?
I talked about Cody Newberry earlier. This is another one. The movie I'm going to say he disagrees strongly with me with, but he talked about Mad Max Fury Road. I absolutely agree with him on that. Movies like The Revenant and Birdman are also movies I find incredibly overrated. Most of Christopher Nolan's work after 2008 I find to be incredibly overrated, including Inception and Dunkirk. But the one that I am going with that some people know me from this community, know that I think this is the most overrated movie of this century. I'm going with Toy Story 3.
Whoa. This, yeah. Buzzer, klaxon. Toy Story 3.
Yeah.
Two Oscars. Best Animated and Best Original Song. 3 other nominations. Best Picture. I love this film. Best Picture, Sound Editing, Adapted Screenplay. The first animated film to make over $1 billion worldwide. Mm-hmm. Closes out within the top 4 perfect trilogies of all time. Forget animated.
Does it close it though? Is there another one coming?
Yeah, at the moment it closes it out.
That's true.
At the moment it closes it out. 8.3 on IMDb, which is the highest of all the Toy Stories. It's both incredibly moving and fantastically heartwarming at the same time sometimes. That's overrated?
I do think it is.
Okay, sell me on it.
Okay, so I'll give my pitch and we'll try. I've given it before to some people. Like I gave it to Chance Ellison once, and he just would not listen.
Yeah.
But
I'm not saying I'm going to listen either. But
no, that's fine. I wouldn't expect you to. When I tell people I don't like Toy Story 3, they look. I don't think half of them just immediately aren't friends with me anymore. But so the first 2 Toy Stories, I think. Were revolutionary from a technological standpoint. Obviously, the first Toy Story to be realistically, it's the first 3D animated film. Mm-hmm. Toy Story 2 came out in '99. Also revolutionary. Easily one of the best animated sequels of all time. One of the best Pixar movies of all time. Great voice work throughout the first 2 Toy Stories. I really like the first 2 Toy Stories, and I like parts of Toy Story 3. I think it was extremely overhyped, especially when it comes to the Oscar nominations. I don't think this movie has any place being nominated for Best Picture, in my opinion. I don't think Up did the year before either, but that's a whole other story. Ultimately, I think that Toy Story 3 is a movie that a lot of people say is very heartwarming and moving and emotional, but I find it to be really cold and concocted and just the writers got together and were like, okay, what's the best way to play on as much nostalgia as possible since we were waiting 11 years to come out with this sequel. And I think it rides too much on nostalgia. I don't think it has as much stakes as both of the first 2 Toy Stories. I don't think it has as good of a message as the first 2 Toy Stories. People tout it as one of the best animated films of all time. People tout it as the best Pixar movie. People tout it as the best Toy Story movie. I think it's the least of all of those. I think, Toy Story 3 is a movie that, like I said, there are parts that are very entertaining, but what the first 2 Toy Story did, the first 2 films did for animated films, really, they were 2 of the first movies ever to truly appeal to both a child and an adult audience at the same time. Mm-hmm. There have been animated movies before that parts of the film were adult and parts of the film were for kids. Yeah. But these were the first films to truly walk that line perfectly, and I think Toy Story 3 it did not walk that line at all. I think half of the movie was trying to be very adult, especially towards the end when they're all holding hands in the incinerator. Once again, there's no stakes there. You know that they're all going to get out of that. There's no way that this movie ends like that. Whereas they tried to have the stakes be too high, is what I'm saying. In the first two Toy Stories, like, yeah, Woody got torn, he might get put away. Buzz isn't actually a toy. Like, those are stakes. They are small stakes in a smaller, contained world. Toy Story 3 went too big. I think those parts tried to be too adult. And as for the kids' part, like, all the stuff with the Ken doll and lots of the stuff with Woody at Bonnie's house with all of those new toys was just outlandishly childish. And this movie just didn't try to walk the line. It felt lazy. And I still like the movie. Like, I feel like I'm bashing it too much. I do still... There are parts of this movie I do really enjoy, but overall, I think it gets a lot of credit as being very original, when I think the entire film was just a rehash of the first two. The villain is literally the exact same villain as in Toy Story 2 with a new coat of paint and a new voice actor. It's literally just another toy who is angry at humans for abandoning him, and he is trying to find worth in himself by bringing other people down. That's the exact same villain. So, yeah, overall, I think Toy Story 3 is less nuanced than the first two and more lazy, nostalgia-based writing than the first two, and I think that's where it fails for me.
Okay. I mean, you're wrong, but okay. No, it's after a 5-minute monologue of putting his point across, I'll just kill him like that. I can see your point. As you said, as we mentioned earlier on, when I said with the Lord of the Rings, I'm a massive fan of when a first in a trilogy, which I'm probably going to ignore Toy Story 4 completely until someone tells me that it's good, because
until it's in theaters, yeah.
Yes, it's pretty much like Indy 4, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom. I can't even say that. Yeah, it doesn't exist. Forget it. Toy Story 4, until there's physical proof, it doesn't exist. So this is one of the most perfect trilogies but I think that over sentimentality that you're on about, I think they played to the audience that the first one did. They were playing to the same crowd. So in oh god, when was the first Toy Story?
First one was 95.
Yes. So those kids and adults in 95, all those in between. I was 20, so I was neither adult nor parent. Mm-hmm. I'm quite happy to say there, and I watched it in there, and I was a massive fan from the off with it.
Yeah.
And those ones that were kids there are then come to 2010 when this is out, so 15 years later. Those young adults have now got kids and parents and have been through not so much what the toys are going through, but what Andy's having to give up his childhood and he's going off to college and so on and so forth. I think it's not after a new audience with it, but it's doing the payoff of everyone that's been on this journey of the three films. I just come up with a saying that I absolutely detest when people saying, "Oh, what a great journey you've been on."
No, I kind of understand what you're coming from. Like, and part of it is I mean, obviously, I'm a huge animation fan, huge Pixar fan. But I think this was just. The first two specifically were at a little bit of the wrong time for me. Yeah. I didn't see either in theaters. I was too young. I mean, the first movie that I actually... I'm going to date myself here. The first movie I consciously remember seeing in theaters was Finding Nemo. I was born in the year before Toy Story 2 came out.
Okay.
So... I definitely still watched them a bunch and still really enjoyed the first two a bunch. Yeah. But I think... maybe I was just a little bit too young in 2010 when Toy Story 3 came out, because I was a little bit too old for the super childy parts, but maybe I was a little bit too young for the more adult parts, so I saw it as not being as nuanced. Mm-hmm. I think that definitely could have been part of it.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, those the kids now that come to Toy Story and can go, okay, I'm watching 1, then 2, then 3, bang, done. Yes, you get the complete story, but you not get history that those that saw it in the theatre in 95, saw it in 99, and saw it in 2010. That 2010, that 15-year journey of having these... God, I've said that again. that 15-year story of start to finish is massively important to why that when they're in the smelting net towards the end there, why those people that are waiting 15 years for this thinking, oh my god, they might actually finish it like this, because it's not a bang 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 story. You've been with them for 15 years rather than 5 hours. So, but anyway, yes, okay. Look, you put on a passionate plea to defend yourself. I will with Chance and probably 98% of the people that listen to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
But again, the beauty about this podcast and these questions is they're your list, so it's your choice.
Mm-hmm.
But you're wrong. Okay, we'll flip it on its head. What's your most underrated?
There's a couple that I thought could fit in here too. A few more animated, actually, underrated. Things like A Bug's Life and Monsters University are Pixar films that aren't talked about enough. Mm-hmm. I didn't really want to talk about it, but the Hobbit trilogy of Peter Jackson's Hobbit trilogy are movies I actually really, really love. Yep. But that's also
I like the first two.
Yeah, the first two are brilliant. The last one I still find parts that I really, really enjoy. So I debated putting those movies, but I'm actually going to go for a different different fantasy film that came out the same year as like a bunch of other fantasy films. I think 2007 was a really weird year for fantasy movies, because we got things like Stardust and The Golden Compass, but we also got Aragon. Aragon was 2006.
Yes,
so either way, mid 2000s. Aragon is a movie that a lot of people are very quick to crap on, and that's because the book, which it's based on, well, a lot of people would say that. I don't. The book was written by a teenager,
yes,
and it was later adapted into a film. The books are a series that I really like. And the movie was an okay adaptation, but overall I think there are bits and parts of this movie that I think are unfairly judged as bad. As a movie as a whole, I don't think it 100% works, so I'm not saying that this is like a hidden gem of a movie that everybody should discover because it's the best film ever made. That's not at all what I'm saying. No. But I definitely think that there are performances, specifically by Jeremy Irons, and the action and the visual effects I think are all really, really well done for a mid-2000s fantasy movie, post Lord of the Rings, because that really obviously set the stage for visual effects in fantasy. So yeah, I think the visual effects, the dragon itself, the relationship between Saphira the dragon and Aragon the main character, all really well done. Jeremy Irons is fantastic. Yeah, I think the pure fantasy moments of this movie are really well done. The actual fantasy action with the dragon, the antagonist, that's the character I believe is called like a shade, which is like an evil kind of like the fantasy parts of this movie work very well. The visual effects work very well in my opinion. Some of the other parts, some of the pacing's a little slow, some of the performances are not quite all the way there. A lot of it is sort of beat by beat for Star Wars a little bit.
Yes.
So I see the critiques, but overall I think people should go back and rewatch this once more and rediscover it, because it's a movie that I think has a lot of bits and pieces that I really enjoy.
And I agree with you pretty much 100% there. I actually quietly enjoy this. It's one that occasionally I think of what sort of franchise starting films that finished after the first one could be doing with carrying on, and this is massively up on that list for me. I think if there's enough in there to maybe carry on the story.
Absolutely. There's 3 more books that take place after this one. They're a little bit big and they're a little bit thick. There's a little bit more to unpack in the sequel of books, but the second book is my favorite of the 4.
Yeah.
And I really wish that they would have been able to continue, but just critically and financially, this was kind of a flop when it came out.
Yeah.
So the sequels didn't really happen, but in an alternate universe where this movie is amazing and makes a ton of money, and people really respond well to it, and the sequels do get made, I think this could have been a great franchise.
No, absolutely. I mean, this was on a subject on Bibiani's podcast critically acclaimed. Is it
Yep,
critically
critically
acclaimed?
Yep.
Yeah, him and Whitney were talking about this last week before. Yeah. Second best movie, Dragon, would you say?
Yeah, it's up there.
I think.
It's
I mean,
definitely
Smaug.
Smaug is
Simply because of how recent in terms of effects quality. It's either this or Dragonheart, I think, because I quite like that Dragon in Dragonheart.
Yeah. This one connects a little bit more with me just because I definitely saw this movie before Dragonheart and rewatched this more than Dragonheart. But I mean, there's also not a ton of great movie dragons, so it's definitely up there, but it's not a very high bar either.
No, very true, very true. A nice, funny little fact of this is the major film to be released on VHS in the States.
Ooh, I did not know that. That's very interesting.
There you go. Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart were both offered the role of Brom in this, or Jeremy Irons took it. They both had previous engagements in the X-Men series. So
yeah, and I just mentioned Stardust, both with Matthew Vaughn directing and the 2007 fantasy movie. Stardust, Ian McKellen's in that too.
Yes. So it was a busy time, busy guy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Also in Lord of the Rings. Fancy that.
Yeah, funny. Yeah, it's kind of strange that. So yeah, it's quietly watchable film. It's not tearing up any trees in ways of quality, but a good Sunday morning film to sit down and watch while you're recovering.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, let's have another little bit of fun with. What's a film that you like that no one would expect you to?
Yeah, so I already mentioned it a little bit, or one of my options a little bit earlier, which is the Saw franchise, just because I'm not a very big horror guy. Once again, me and Cody Newberry are the exact same film taste. But the one I ended up going for is actually a comedy called Team America World Police.
I love this film.
Which is a movie that is objectively offensive and also hilarious. Made by the guys Trey Parker and Matt Stone from South Park.
Yep.
It is hilarious in every way that it shouldn't be. You should feel so uncomfortable watching it, but you don't because you're too busy laughing. It's memorable, it's quotable, it is cussing and grotesque stuff with puppets, and it is so much fun. And I don't think people would expect me to like this movie, but I love it.
Yeah, no, it's the songs. I mean, just the Kim Jong Un Il
so lonely.
I shall worry, and oh god, yeah, I genuinely, even back in 2004, I genuinely don't know how they were able to get this film made. I don't think they'll be able to, even in the way that it's a spoof and obviously it's a comedy. I don't think they could get it made nowadays, and that's only 14 years.
No, yeah, I definitely agree with that. Just times socially have changed,
yes.
And even now, looking at this movie through today's lens, it is really offensive. But man, it's so funny. It pokes fun at like Hollywood greats like Alec Baldwin and Matt Damon with the Film Actors Guild. Yeah, Matt Damon. That's what this from. That quote, the Matt Damon quote, comes from this movie.
Yeah.
And it's like a terrorist plot, and it's North Korea, and it's America. Fuck yeah! Like it is everything.
Yeah, it's. I mean, one of my favourite parts. One of them is Everyone Loves a Montage.
Yeah.
It's about sucks, not as bad as Ben Affleck in Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
But it's towards the end there, and it's weird dicks. It's arrogant, stupid dicks.
Yeah.
Actually, guild of pussies.
Yeah.
Kim Jong-un's an asshole.
Kim Jong-un's an asshole.
Don't like dicks because pussies get fucked by dicks, but dicks also fuck assholes.
Yeah.
Just...
Sometimes they get so full of shit that they become assholes.
Yeah.
Like, this movie is just stupid and funny. Like this FBI anti-terrorist group from America has to hire this actor who has been in like a stage musical called Everyone Has AIDS, and like there's like there's the scene of like just puppets having sex, and then there's the puke scene
yes.
in the alley with just like swelling music as he's just vomiting everywhere.
Yeah,
like,
it gets towards the end. Oh my god, he's acting.
He's acting. Come on, Chris, act. It's so stupid. Like Samuel L. Jackson, like they just make fun of all of these actors towards the end in the action scene.
Yeah,
and this movie is just so much fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Brilliant. Okay, we'll move on though, because otherwise people will start wanting to see the film even more. Back into the genre types. What's your favourite classic? Another one that's obviously very, very broad.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, classic, really, to some people, like, depending on how you define it, anything pre-1980, or even older.
Depending on your age.
Exactly, depending on your age. Like, there are so many movies, but really one came to mind, and there wasn't a single other movie that I thought of that, like, was a nomination that even came close to that one. And that's It's a Wonderful Life. This is a movie I watch 2 or 3 times a year. I watch it every single Christmas Eve without fail since I was probably 7 years old. 1946, Frank Capra, Jimmy Stewart, Donna Reed, I think.
Yes, yeah, it is.
Music composed by a really underrated composer. I actually took a film music class in college, so I'm kind of a film music nerd, but Russian composer named Dmitri Tiomkin, who composed a lot of Frank Capra stuff. This is just an incredible movie about a character study about George Bailey, about a man who had a dream, who selflessly gave it up time and time and time again to help out people, to be a good person. And it really is just a movie about how much the people around you love you and appreciate you, and how much you have impacted other people's lives. It's my favorite Christmas movie of all time. But I don't have to watch it at Christmas time. It is just transcendent of everything. It's incredibly quotable. It's so memorable. Every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings. I revisit this movie all the time, and it is hands down, bar none, my favorite classic.
Okay, that you've sold it so well. I feel really, really bad saying I just don't get the film. It's one of those that maybe it's the fact that my parents were like you and absolutely adored it, and it was drilled into me that this is the best Christmas film of all. We're watching it. No, sit down. You are watching. And
and it is a little bit long. It's a little bit long, and there are spots where it's a little bit slow. But overall, I just haven't watched this film for years.
Yeah, no, so I feel that this for me is the film version of Barry Manilow, because my mum was a massive Barry Manilow fan. So every time she went anywhere near the record player at the time, it was Manilow, and I grew up hating Barry Manilow. This is the film version of him for me. It just doesn't tick my boxes, but I understand why. It's obviously it was nominated for 5 or 6 Oscars.
I think 6. I don't remember.
The big ones as well. It was director, actor, picture, and so on and so forth. So I know it's beloved by many people. It's just not for me. This was one that was very, very nearly on my most overrated when I did mine as well. But okay, right, we'll go on, because otherwise I'll bring too many people down and thinking about how disappointed I am with it. What's the best soundtrack?
So this is also a really tough answer for me. There were a lot that I went with. Some musicals, some weren't. I debated putting Guardians of the Galaxy in there. I think people have talked about that on the show before. But I ended up deciding to go with a musical. And even in the musicals, this was tough for me to decide. Sing Street is a movie that was recent that had a great soundtrack. Beauty and the Beast and Lion King, both perfect soundtracks. Even the added songs of 2017's Beauty and the Beast. I love Evermore as a song. That's just a side note. Greatest Showman has a great soundtrack. But I went with a slightly older musical, and that's Newsies. Newsies is my favorite stage musical of all time. It's about the news strike at the end of the 1800s in New York City. And coming out of the Mexican-American War, basically these newsboys in New York, they had to they're very poor boys, usually living in orphan homes, who had to buy newspapers from a seller, and then they had to go out and sell them. So that's how they made their money. And yeah, this is just a brilliant soundtrack full of so many amazing songs. I actually was on the episode of Suddenly Soundtracks over on Take 3 where we talked about this. Okay. And it is just an incredible soundtrack through and through, both the stage musical and the movie itself. I love every second of it.
Okay. And yeah, it's another one here that has passed me by for some reason before it. I couldn't tell you a single song from it.
It's not incredibly mainstream. It's mainstream for people like who are really, really into musical theater, especially the live action stage show. But as a movie, it was kind of overlooked. It was released by Disney in the early '90s, directed by the same guy who went on to the High School Musical movies, Kenny Ortega.
All right.
So I really don't blame at all people who haven't seen it. It's a little bit under the radar, but it's one that I come back to a lot.
Yeah. Oh, okay, fantastic. Right, we'll get to the final question, and it brings us neatly round back to the first question. What's your favourite franchise? If we couldn't guess.
Yeah, so obviously it's the Middle-earth franchise, although I did debate talking about Harry Potter and the Planet of the Apes franchise, which are two other franchises I really enjoy. Mm-hmm. But overall, it always has been, is, and always will be the Middle-earth. And I say Middle-earth because I don't just mean Lord of the Rings. I mean Lord of the Rings, I mean The Hobbit, I mean the animated films from Rankin and Bass and Ralph Bakshi. This is by far my favorite franchise of all time. We touched on it a lot at the beginning, but for all of those reasons and more, just the pure storytelling and the way that characters are actually affected by what happens. There are stakes, At the beginning of Fellowship, you have the hobbits in the Shire who are dancing on tables and singing drinking songs, and at the end of Return of the King, they're all quietly sitting in the pub, and they all just drink quietly without speaking, and you really see the toll that the journey takes on each individual character.
Yes, absolutely. Now, this is The Lord of the Rings. I hadn't read the books until, I think, a year or two before the film came out. I'd heard that it was being remade. I think I was working at a bookshop at the time, I'll rephrase that, I was working as security in a bookshop at the time. Picked up a film magazine, read that it was in there, and then went out and bought the trilogy and read the books. And yeah, although there are some glaring omissions from the book to the films, it's still an incredibly accurate adaptation.
Yeah, definitely. And there are some things that, it's an adaptation process. There are things left out of Harry Potter, too, that aren't movies, which you just kind of have to understand, because not everything that works on a page when your imagination is allowed to be a little bit more broad, especially in fantasy storytelling, not all of that works on the screen. So you can't really do the Scouring of the Shire. You can't really do Tom Bombadil or these other things in the movies. I am a big fan of the books. I know the movies far better than I know the books, but I still love J.R.R. Tolkien's lore and his world.
Yes.
But yeah, I really, really like the way that the writers, Peter Jackson, Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, Stephen Sinclair, I really, really liked how they adapted specifically Lord of the Rings to really, they didn't have a line for line, word for word shoot the book, because that wouldn't have worked.
No.
They kept the themes, they kept the main story, and that's what mattered, is the themes and the lessons that translated. And while I do really enjoy the Hobbit movies, I do agree that they did not do as good of a job adapting the Hobbit book to the screen. Hobbit book is a book I like more than Lord of the Rings books.
I think the problem with the Hobbit trilogy, I think they tried to capture magic in a bottle again by spreading it out. Whereas you had 3 films in the Lord of the Rings trilogy and 3 books, I think the mistake trying to stretch out 3 films from one book.
That's definitely true, and part of that is the studio. Part of that was Guillermo del Toro was signed on to be the director, which would have been just a trippy world that I'm not actually sure I want to see. But it would have been very different from Peter Jackson's Hobbit trilogy. But yeah, ultimately, I still find a lot that I like in the Hobbit trilogy. But I absolutely agree with you that there's not enough content in the Hobbit book to make it worth 3 movies, which is why, characters like Tauriel were invented. It's why Legolas was brought in. It's why the love triangle happened. It's why Azog was brought back. Because really, in the Hobbit book, after Smaug, there's not an antagonist. Which, if the studio says you're doing 3 movies, and that's what the contract reads, because that's what the box office is telling you to do, you have to take some liberties in the adaptation process.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But going back to the original trilogy, it's not even that, is it? The Lord of the Rings trilogy on there.
Them good ones.
Them 3 good ones. Incredibly successful. The 3 films, obviously filmed simultaneously. A combined shooting of, I think, 270 days or somewhere around that. Which is, I remember saying they were the same amount of time filming as Apocalypse Now was. That's all 3 films.
Yeah.
All 3 films combined was the same shoot schedule as Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, which is crazy. Partially because Apocalypse Now was just like a production nightmare, but also like there was a lot to do in Lord of the Rings, and it was an expensive trilogy to make. But the story and the characters and the critical and financial acclaim and the Oscars, like all of that, made it worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's Fellowship was 4 wins and 9 nominations, then 2 and 4.
13 nominations. Yeah, Fellowship was nominated for more than Return of the King.
Was it? Wow.
Yeah, which a lot of people, because obviously Return of the King, the biggest Oscar sweep in history, 11 out of 11 of 11.
That was it. Yeah,
which is just like unreal. Incredibly impressive. One, not only that it wins everything it's nominated for, but the fact that it won 11 in the first place. Yeah. But yeah, Fellowship was nominated for 4.
Yeah, Fellowship. Yeah, 1 from 4 with another 9 nominations. Yeah. And then 2 Towers, although it had
2
6.
Of 5,
yeah,
right?
2 of 4.
2 of 4.
Okay. Yes. Wow.
Yeah.
Hold on a minute. Right, mark this down. It was get the timestamp here. Robert Harper gets a Lord of the Rings factory.
Yeah, it's Oscars. Those damn Oscars.
Yeah. So 17 wins and another 11 nominations on top of that. It's just an incredible return. I mean, it's made Peter Jackson's career, although he's bad taste before that. What else had he done before?
Before that, he did like some really like B horror movies.
Yeah, he did Bad Taste.
And he's done some stuff after that too, like between even The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings.
The Frighteners, that was it.
Yeah,
did the
Frighteners. Yeah, that's actually the movie he sent. And Heavenly Creatures was the other one. Heavenly Creatures and The Frighteners were the 2 movies that he would like send to like Andrew Leslie, who was the cinematographer on the Lord of the Rings films, or he would send to Alan Lee and John Howe, who were the like the concept artists. He would send these movies, like free copies of these movies, to artists and filmmakers all over the world, saying, "Hey, I'm making Lord of the Rings. Here's what I've done before. Please be on my crew." Yeah.
That's and as I say, since then, despite it, or not ignoring, but cutting out the other Middle-earth films. Obviously, King Kong was his coming out of Lord of the Rings film.
Love that movie.
And then Lovely Bones in 2009, which was another book adaptation. There. But,
and now he's producing Mortal Instruments or Mortal Engines. Mortal Engines, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Back to the Lord of the Rings. What's your opinion on the TV series?
So I've talked about this a little bit before, and my take is they're giving it this gigantic budget But I don't want a Lord of the Rings TV series. I absolutely want a TV series from the world of Middle-earth. I don't want it to be Lord of the Rings. I don't need to see Frodo take the ring to Mordor again, because I have 12 and a half to 13 hours of that story perfectly told beat for beat.
Yes.
And I don't need to see it as a TV series. The lore of Tolkien's world is way deeper than just Lord of the Rings, than Hobbit. I pull some book pulls here. I want to see some stuff from the Silmarillion. I want to see...
Yeah, that was where I was going. Is that if the story's coming from that...
I absolutely want to see that.
I can imagine them being essentially the young Aragorn.
Yeah.
The stories of the young Aragorn.
Yeah, I could see that. Talk about the Dunedain. Talk about how they kind of like came to be. Talk about the early days of Gondor before Rohan was even a country. Talk about the 5 wizards that Gandalf mentions. There's 5 Istari. Talk about how they were basically like quasi-gods, basically. And like they came to Middle-earth with the Silmarils. Like, there's just so much more you can talk about. Do young Aragorn, go for it. Like, but I don't want to see Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. No, I don't think they'll do that. I think the Lord of the Rings TV is just the easy headline tap for it. I think it's going to be a Middle-earth TV series, and you're right. They can't really go past it, because it's. I mean, let's face it. Return of the King had more than enough endings as it was, without stretching it into a whole TV series as well.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Okay, we're done.
There we go.
Thank you once again, Robert Parker. This is. Without a doubt, I mean, we literally just ticked over the 2 hours on here. This has been the fastest 2 hours I've ever had on one of these recordings. Really enjoyed having you on here. Just to remind everyone that's listening... Oh, sorry, no, go, please talk.
I was just going to say thank you so much for having me. I've been a long-time listener of this podcast on all of the different networks. I really appreciate you having me on.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. Remind everyone that's listening, we are on iTunes and Podbean, so please download the episodes, follow the feed, subscribe, press the link, click the reviews, and all that stuff. Robert, if you've got anything you'd like to plug,
sure, you can follow me on Twitter and Letterboxd at RBRTPRKR98. I know it's a complicated handle, but it's my first and last name without vowels plus a year. Other than that, I'm on a lot of the Take-3 production stuff. I'm all over the fan trivia community, competing, hosting, question writing, just pretty much everywhere there. And then the other thing is coming down the pipe, there's some different podcasts and shows that have been in pre-production for a while that hopefully within the next couple weeks or a month or two are going to get off the ground. I'm looking to do a show with 2 guests you've actually already had on. One show with me and Zach Ford that him and I have been planning for a while, and then a different show itself and Cody Newberry. So those are both shows that we're not exactly sure the minutia of where they're going to be available yet or how, but look for those in the coming months.
Oh, superb. I will keep an eye out for those. Okay, if you yourself fancy being on the pod, like Robert here, then you can email us on thatmadeyourlist@outlook.com. We're on Twitter with @thatmadeyour. We're also now on Instagram, that perfect medium for an audio podcast. But I'll make it work somehow. That's That Made Your List. And we have our own Facebook page, That Made Your List. That's where you can find all the old episodes as well as a pinned post of the questions that get asked. So please get involved on the posts. Have a shout at Robert. No, not a shout. Engage in healthy debate with Robert about why he thinks that Aragorn's underrated. Let's not mention Toy Story at all. But please, if you are going to engage, please be polite. Don't be rude to these guys. Okay, I've been Dave Goodger. He's Robert Parker, and this has been That Made Your List.